You have seen the title and I'm sure that you already give it a good read too. Riven, it is something that is quite polarizing. The system itself is riddled with many long-standing issues, and as of the depth shot 115, the Riven Changes, at least from what they said, finally had some actual change that will truly matter. Two key things that you can take away from the depth shot. The first thing is stat locking. The second one is combine stats into one row. Let's talk about the stat locking first. When you roll rivens, you can now lock a stat from being rerolled, say plus damage on this instance, albeit it now costs additional resources from doing so, which is entirely different from Kuva. On paper, locking a stat is something that definitely makes rivens less RNG intensive, because managing 3 stat rolls has better odds than managing 4 stat rolls, you know. There are 194,304 possible Riven variants for a 3 plus 1 minus rifle Riven, and the ability to lock one stat immediately drops it down to just 8,096 possible Riven rolls that you need to look for before you use the stat lock function. Obviously, these are just paper talk, and the entire system is much complicated than just theoretical numbers. At the end of the day, you are still at the mercy of the thing that makes RNG lovable and hateable, luck, which I will talk about later. The second thing is stat combine. This allows you to combine two of the stats you roll into something that is not accessible through rolling your rivens. Say plus weak point damage like they show on Death Shot 115, but with a more prestigious resource that you can only get from the supposedly quote-unquote hard content. Without a doubt, this will open up a lot of potential combination, and I suppose that this is why the stat lock exists in the first place. It is there to make sure that the stats could be locked, because as it currently stands, it seems to not able to retain set roll into something else, according to how Pablo responds on Twitter, but who knows. Anyways, these two changes looks good. Stat locks plus more potential combination that spices up the quite stale and problematic nature of Rivens are greatly appreciated, but as the title suggests, it is not without problems. To start this section off, let's take a look at the stat locking feature. You are doing this at the expense of even more additional grind that adds nothing but friction to the already tons of friction Riven rolling simulator. What is the point of adding more currency type to justify it, instead of adjusting the price of Kuva to reflect it instead? What? You're gonna grind the new mission intensively, which can also be a very unenjoyable experience, on top of meta the shit out of arbitration, so that you can enjoy the feature that you may not even benefit much. Since the odds are still very insane after locking one stat, keep in mind that the process of rolling rivens is already tedious due to the animation you have to go through every roll. And this new system you introduce does not streamline the process. It only adds unnecessary bloat. And this is your idea of a QOL pass? Also, don't you think it wastes the already limited dev time when you can just incorporate this into the Kuva resource itself? Like a price increase on Kuva, let it be 1.5 times the price. The same philosophy applies to Stack Combine. Even if you can argue that it is much more prestigious and impactful, it still does not change the fact that this can also be done with just Kuva only. You add two different resources for two functions, and each requires different types of grind. When reroll, stat lock, and stat combine can simply be done with just Kuva when you adjust the price properly. More currency makes the system complicated. Why not make a single resource that dedicates itself to Riven rolling, take care of everything that is related to Riven? And the impact of stat combine can go both ways as well. It either turns into the most luck maxim bullshit with two combined rolls plus a good normal roll simulator, as the value of doing so are so insane. Or it is downright not worth to even interact with the system at all due to the terrible value proposition. But still, what you are doing right now only makes Riven even more RNG intensive. and giving it a stat lock doesn't change anything. And despite all of that, none of the new addition even attempt to address the long-standing bad that keeps the Riven a fundamentally terrible system. The root problems that you should honestly resolve, but you don't. I am glad that Rivens finally see some light at the end of a tunnel, but that still does not turn the system as a whole good. Multiple years long of issues that people have with Rivens are still left unaddressed. The first one is the disposition system. On paper, it is a viable system to make sure that weapons that are most used and powerful are bound with lower disposition, and weapons that has very low use rate due to their lack of power has high disposition to make up for it. Remove the current disposition system like what Brozyme did in his rework concept video is without a shadow of a doubt a 0 out of 10 suggestion. Treating every weapon equally only makes the already terrible Riven system worse. Weak weapons stays weak, and strong weapons will always stay strong. That is how the suggested idea comes down to. The system isn't archaic, it's just that they are incapable of enforcing the system well and follow the rules. Weapons with the most use rate with impossible stats, like some incarnates, didn't have their disposition nerfed, and instead they are kept extremely high. Nobody can explain the thought process behind not nerfing the disposition of all those OP weapons down without it being monetary driven. That is just how it is. On top of that, the disposition changes are far and few between. Yes, one disposition changes every major update could work when there are no new weapons around. But the issue is, they keep introducing new weapons and force them to start at 0.5 disposition. The disposition that should reserve for the most used weapons ever. Who thought that giving a new upgrade to something, say Coda variant for X weapon or 0.5 dispo, when their counterpart is literally sitting at over 1.3x, even 1.4x? What are we thinking here? Even if their disposition do get buffed, the frequency of set buff forces weapons like such to take easily a year to even have a disposition that is somewhat serviceable, let alone reaching the middle ground that is 1.0 disposition. The fact that all new weapons did not start at a disposition of 1.0 and adjust it accordingly to its power and use rate afterwards is genuinely baffling. You introduce a system that is supposed to dictate how strong their Rivens should be. It should be treated with your best effort, not half-assing it and eventually give up upon balancing the Riven disposition and just buff everything. So, am I excited for this change? Maybe. The changes are something substantial, but as I have detailed throughout this video, I hardly have expectations. Let me know your thoughts about the recent Riven changes. And yeah, that's all for today. See you all next time. Goodbye.